initiation of the Clean Water Act that reflected a time in the 1960s when so many contaminants were put into rivers that they, in certain places, caught on fire, and from the hydrocarbons that were in them. And those were from direct dumping of materials into the river. I think experience with eutrophication and the direct dumping of sewage into rivers has prompted similar sorts of responses, that these are really obvious point sources of contaminants, and it's relatively straightforward to cut off those point sources and say, okay, well, clean water is valuable, let's treat the sewage, or let's stop that effluent going into a river. Making it a Superfund site recognizes that there's been a history of industrial use in the area that has resulted in PCBs and toxic metals being present, but those are things that are certainly coming in at a much slower rate. They're not a result of ongoing industry. So the health of the river now, I think, much more reflects the landscape around the river and the extent to which sort of the modern cocktail of urban pollutants continues to run into that river. So the point sources are fewer because there's regulations against dumping things like that into rivers, but it's sort of a problem of the death of a thousand cuts now. So to what extent is that river buffered against impervious surfaces and urbanization happening in the watershed?
It's really nice and peaceful, actually, to be able to come out here and then be able to return home, and I just feel more calm, and I can go about, the city life in a more calm way and not be as stressed out or affected. So it really helps out just coming out here. It's like meditation.
Nature Consortium teaches environmental lessons through the creative arts and hands-on conservation projects. Volunteers are usually people, there is no usual people anymore, not for me. Like, if you go to a lot of other parks and you see their volunteer groups, they have fewer work parties, so it's usually like a smaller, tight-knit group. I think a lot of other groups might not want people in the parks at all. It's more of, let's just do this for the sake of the forest and the animals. And part of me wants to do it just for the forest and the animals. But again, there's forest for those purposes outside of the city, and why not have an interface for people in urban areas to the wildlife and the native plants and trees? That's why I think that it is important to have volunteer opportunities in forests. It is important that people have positive experiences in the forests. Volunteers are pretty much the most important thing in my job. Even if I had 100 shovels and I didn't have people to put the shovels into their hands, I wouldn't be able to do anything I do right now. We will see probably around 6,000 or more volunteers this year, and it continues to grow each year. Hiring professional crews is often more economical to get rid of invasive species and plant natives on public lands. But when you hire only professional crews, you don't engage the public. If you don't engage the public, then you don't have public ownership over public lands.
I've been involved with the Nature Consortium since December 2003. I was an official employee, kind of worked like Buffalo did for a while until about 2007, and then I got engaged in other work, other jobs. I'm a PhD student, so in school I teach. So this is my first time back actually in 2 years. Even though we're planting lots of shrubs and ground covers out here, the real focus of the big work has been going out deep into the green belt and planting conifer trees, managing succession in the last largest forest in the city of Seattle. My son has some community service requirements to graduate high school. I thought, well, let's be local. We live in the neighborhood, and let's come down here and do this work. I'm hoping to get my son involved in doing this work after he graduates with the Washington Conservation Corps. So I thought this would be a good way to get experience, and he has something to put on his resume, and I miss it. I love working for the Nature Consortium.
This is my second time to the Greenbelt, but I volunteered with Nature Consortium 3 times. I think my favorite thing is digging up root balls because there's something that feels really good, like when you hear that crack sound, you know, and like you've got it in that, when the shovel hits into the dirt. And I think that's just kind of because it's probably sort of like almost like an animal instinct, like you're conquering the root ball, sort of. So that's probably my favorite part. My office job that I have a really great view of the sound from my little office. And so when I'm working there and I get distracted and I look outside, I always what gets me through the week is knowing that I can get out there during the weekend. So I kind of have a balance.
When I was younger than before.
At the end of the day, we're doing art and we're doing conservation, but if at the end of the day all the trees die and all the art sucks, which these are not conditions that are rare, sometimes that happens, but that's not the most important thing that we do. We're not looking at those particular numbers as the most important thing. If we're connecting people to an outdoor space or to a concept that's ecological and has an impact on their life, then that's really what we're after.
When I was greener than the hill, where flowers